Welcome back, ecom friends and family. But before we get into it, just a lot of changes in the agency, a lot of exciting things, new brands, team members, internal structures, and we just really wanted to make sure that we were focusing on the brands that we had and just had clear plans in place, forecasts, etc. for everyone that we're working with. Kind of took a backseat from a content perspective. We're not even running ads or anything, but we'll be picking that back up probably towards March. But I have a really cool video for you today. Something that actually comes up a lot from my perspective. These are the 3 e-commerce scenarios, paths of growth that I see and are the most common. And this isn't like some sort of like ChatGPT or repurposed blueprint or just rubbish that I'm kind of spitting now. This is just genuinely a conclusion that I've come to off the back of just years in the game, and it's a conversation that I have very frequently. So number one, and I do have my notes here, I've kind of stepped away from the scripted videos, gonna start doing a bit more kind of podcast style videos. I feel like they're probably a bit more authentic, a lot less planning as well. You probably can assume that the previous videos had a teleprompter, which is good, and it's great to kind of keep that energy, but I think it's probably just a bit more easier from this perspective and kind of allows me to go down a train of thought. So apologies if I do ramble a little bit. The first one is they just simply want to grow 10 to 30% year on year. It's a very common scenario, and this is usually somebody who has an established business. So they're probably around a decade old, longer, a little bit shorter. And what's common here is they've already made an abundance of mistakes. You know, they've worked with the wrong team, they've worked on the wrong platforms, they've invested in things that haven't worked, they found out what did work, and they've come to this conclusion where they have like a really strong baseline of customers, really strong idea of who their brand is, and they usually have like a core team. And now it's really just year on year, modest growth, if you want to call it. You know, I'm not saying 15, 20% growth is modest, but, you know, the goal is really manageable, controlled growth. And it's usually done with pivoting strategies, maybe new team members, depending on what size in the business that they're at. And yeah, people usually come to me when they want to shake things up, especially not just me leading social. They tend to have a strong CAC to LTV ratio. Again, that's just something that you can really only, you're not going to be really super confident on those numbers if you're only 18 months or 2 years in business. These are things that are going to come naturally after a long period of time. It's very common these days that these brands tend to be founder focused brands. Now, not all the time, but my own calendar / conversations tend to have a lot of founder focused brands, and I can appreciate that that's probably not a accurate representation of the market for these people, but I speak to a lot of them. I don't know, they come to me off the back of referrals, but they tend to have maybe started a business in 2014, 15, 16, 17, 18, and they've learned everything, and they're founder focused, and they have a strong CAC to LTV ratio, good product, and it just seems to be a very common scenario that I see. And also they tend to also have quite a strong MER because of the fact that they can push a lot of the advertising side of things through the founder-led content, particularly if the founder is an influencer. Very common in like cosmetics, supplements, beauty, leisure wear. They tend to have a strong team in this scenario. So tend to have a good CMO, they have good agency relationships, usually someone that they've been with a couple of years, and they're very reactive with industry trends pretty quickly. Don't let anything slow them down. And yeah, like I said, a lot of these brands seem to have been around close to a decade. So the way that these brands kind of stay on top of themselves, I suppose, and continue to grow is mainly because they have that strong team, the core team, or strong agency relationships. They've made a bunch of mistakes. They know what works. They know what their customer likes, doesn't like, and they have strong fundamentals. So, you know, you can kind of paint the picture there that once you have those strong fundamentals and you have people that are holding themselves accountable to the goals, you can see how like that controlled 10, 15, 20%, 30% growth year on year can really become realistic. So the second one is they want to focus more purely on profitability, not necessarily growth. And the reasons that this kind of has appeared over the years has usually been, it happened a lot in like 2022, 3, and even 4. Brands spent rapidly and they acquired a lot of customers, or at least their gross sales volume went up in a year or two, and they came out of that and they went into the next year and they just didn't quite have that strong baseline and foundations really laid in. As a result of that, they just had a false idea of what their actual business was, and there actually wasn't a lot of profit left over for that founder. Growth is great, but if you're not doing it from a manageable perspective, things can really go arseways. So a lot of conversations that came up on my side was they were saying, oh, I'm late, like we were spending all this money, but there was actually no money left at the end of the month, and we were just told grow, grow, grow. And the scenario, like these are founders that are probably in the low millions, and the profitability side of things, even extracting money out for themselves from a salary perspective was really important. And it just became a scenario where they had to overlook their business, they had to reduce their advertising spend, reduce the agency costs, and get to a position where they were still generating cash flow, still generating new customers, but in a much more controlled state. Their focus was to cool the jets, possibly lower ad spend, usually driving on the retention side of things. So all of these new customers that they acquired in this huge growth phase, leaning into that with your email, SMS, and loyalty programs, and trying to squeeze as much juice as you can through what you've already created. Of course, naturally, that usually appears in new businesses, maybe under 4 years old, and possibly inexperienced founders. But what I've also noticed is this usually happens when the founder is not necessarily a business person, they're a product person, they're a creative person, and they don't really just look at the agency fees, the ad spend, the creative costs as much as they probably should be. But yeah, the goal here is to create the business that's more profitable overall, cut a couple of costs, rejig the team, and put it in a position where the founder can take some more money out, or just stash it for a rainy day within the business. And then the third one is they have a lot of funding and they really want to steamroll the market. I'm talking about people that are totally okay with spending 3, 4, 5 times AOV on acquiring a customer. Now, these are people who usually have had previous success or previous experience running an e-commerce business, or they have assembled a board of Avengers who are super experienced, and they're just super confident in their numbers and in their strategy that they're going to be able to acquire customers at whatever pace that they can, and they're going to be able to retain them through subscriptions, retention strategies, etc. This is far less common, but when I've seen it work really well, I've actually seen it work like so terribly as well. It really does come down to the team and the strategy that's in place. The money doesn't solve everything at all. You can waste a lot of money very quickly if you're running marketing ads and trying to set up an online business, but it's naturally the most aggressive path. Usually brands have huge funding behind them, whether that's an exited founder, BC, they have multiple people on their board, and there's a couple of different ways that can play out. These guys are really here just to take over. At least that's the strategy. They're super confident in their product market fit, which is a huge piece, and it's a huge piece that a lot of people don't actually spend a lot of time on in those kind of earlier stages, but these people know how important product market fit is and they do their research. That's why that's you would hope they do if you're going to give them money to steamroll the market. And they usually have connections to open doors, which is usually something along the lines on the retail side, if they're going to open up on the retail side as well. They usually have like I said, an Avengers team essentially. And they live in the numbers. They have a clear plan for growth, and it's centered around their CAC to LTV ratio. They're constantly trying to push AOV. They're constantly looking at their retention side of things. And the game here is strong product market fit mixed with an aggressive customer acquisition strategy, which they know inside out is going to work. Or at least they have a strong hypothesis that it's going to work. So they're kind of the three main ones that I see. They want to grow 10 to 30% year on year. They want to focus purely on profit, not necessarily growth. And the third is they want to steamroll the market, and they've got money to burn. My name is Leighton. I started running Facebook ads in 2016. I now have an agency based in Ireland, working with clients across Europe and the US. We work with mainly e-commerce brands, Shopify brands, across acquisition, retention, creative strategy, and financial forecasting. If you enjoyed that video, I appreciate a like and a subscribe, and please do leave some questions in the comments if you'd like me to answer one of them. Thanks very much. Gur míle maith agat.